Welcome back to the Hizoria development series. In the previous video, I covered characteristics, leveling up, skills and mana, and in this video I'm going to focus on how players actually interact with the world through actions, movement, and some of the systems designed to reward creativity and make different situations feel more dynamic. At the core of gameplay is the action system. Every player receives 2 actions during their turn, and those actions can be spent in many different ways depending on the situation. Players can move, attack enemies, use abilities, and much more. This means that every turn becomes a question of priorities. Should you reposition, attack, use a healing potion, or perhaps save an ally that's about to go down? Because actions are limited, players are constantly making decisions, and that creates a lot of opportunities for strategy and teamwork. Movement itself is one action. When moving, players can travel a distance equal to their speed, which is determined by their dexterity characteristic. Movement can also be split between actions, allowing players to move, perform another action, and then continue moving afterwards. Characters can move horizontally, vertically, and diagonally, with diagonal movement costing the same amount as horizontal and vertical. Characters also cannot occupy the same square as another creature, meaning positioning plays an important role during combat. Corridors can become blocked by allies or enemies, forcing players to think about where they stand and how they move around the battlefield. Opening doors while moving is also possible, although doing so costs 3 speed. This means players have to decide whether to spend some of their movement opening a door or save it for reaching a better position. Attacking costs 1 action. The player has to be within their weapon's range of an enemy to be able to make an attack with said weapon. If a player has no weapon equipped, they can still make an unarmed attack, dealing 2 damage plus their strength overall. Players can also perform a lunge attack, allowing them to move up to 1 meter and attack with the same action. Spells and abilities also consume actions, with spells additionally requiring mana. Items can be exchanged between players for 1 action, and players can drink 1 potion every round for free, but any additional potions require actions. Together, these options give players a large amount of flexibility during their turn. Of course, not everything a player might want to do can be covered by written rules. Sometimes players come up with strange ideas. Maybe they want to shoot down a rope bridge, swing from a chandelier, knock over a bookshelf onto enemies, or attempt to jump across a dangerous gap. These actions are called special actions. When a player proposes something outside the normal list of actions, the Game Master can decide whether the action is possible, and what characteristics should be used. The player may then roll a d20 to determine whether they succeed or fail. Special actions exist to encourage creativity and reward players for thinking beyond the options written on their character sheet. After all, one of the greatest strengths of tabletop games is that players are only limited by their imagination. Another system introduced in version 3 is Hero Dice. Hero Dice are designed to reward memorable moments, creative thinking, role-playing and teamwork. Whenever players solve problems in unique ways, create memorable role-playing moments or overcome challenges through clever thinking, the Game Master can award a Hero Dice. Players can only possess 1 Hero Die at a time. However, if they earn another while already possessing one, their current die upgrades. The progression works like this: D4, D6, D8, D10, and finally D12. Players can add their hero die to any roll they make, whether that's an attack roll, a characteristic check, or some other important roll. However, using the hero die consumes it and resets the progression back to a D4. This means players must carefully decide when to spend it. If a player's hero die reaches a D12, and they gain another hero die after that, something special happens. They instead gain a permanent increase to 1 characteristic of their choice, and after using the D12 hero die, the progression resets and the cycle begins again. The purpose of the system is to reward players for creativity and role-playing rather than simply defeating enemies. Version 3 also introduces a new approach to advantage and disadvantage, which wasn't previously in the game. Hizoria uses a weighted system. Different situations provide different strengths of bonuses and penalties. Minor advantages grant an additional d4 to your roll, moderate advantages grant a d6, and strong advantages grant a d8. Likewise, disadvantages subtract these values from the result. This system allows different situations to have varying levels of impact rather than simply giving advantage or disadvantage. For example, having the high ground might only grant you a minor advantage, while taking the time to prepare beforehand could provide a moderate advantage. Catching an enemy completely off guard, however, might reward you with a strong advantage. The same applies in reverse. Poor visibility, difficult terrain, distractions, or debilitating effects can also impose different levels of disadvantage, depending on how much they hinder your character. Advantages and disadvantages can also partially cancel each other out. For example, if a player has a strong advantage but also suffers from a moderate disadvantage, the result becomes a mild advantage. This creates situations that feel much more natural and gives the Game Master more control over how circumstances influence the outcome of different actions. Critical successes and critical failures are also determined by the original D20 roll, meaning additional dice cannot turn a natural 1 into a success or a natural 20 into a failure. Together, these systems form the foundation of how players interact with the world around them. Actions determine what players can do, movement and positioning add tactical depth to combat, special actions encourage creativity, hero dice reward memorable moments, and weighted advantage and disadvantage allow situations to have much greater impact on gameplay. In the next episode, I'll be covering weapons, loot, damage, and combat. Until then, thank you for watching, and as always, let your imagination run wild.